With the recent changes on the loot table to challenge mode Chambers of Xerix, there's never a better time to start sending some solos. Now, there are increased rates for the ancestral pieces as well as the prized possession, the Twisted Bow, because of the decreased rates of the prayer scrolls in the challenge mode edition of this raid specifically. So without further ado, today I'm here to show you just how easy solo CMs can be in non-max gear. Now, our melee armor here really is downgraded. We're still rocking dragon boots. We got the berserker ring instead of the ultor, and we even have obsidian legs paired with the fighter torso, which the only downside to this is that there's not much defense at all. But if you learn the raid and know what you're doing, this less than ideal defense is not going to be too big of a factor. For our range setup, of course, we're going to be rocking the Vasa setup, a very iconic set, especially for Ironman. Very game-changing set, opens the door for all Ironman accounts. As for our mage gear, we're downgrading to mystics. We have a mismatched set of mystics, and we're even using the Trident of the Swamp, which these days is very outdated, but I'm using it just to show you. You know, even with gear of the past, this is very, very doable. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's go ahead and start this raid. First room, of course, is going to be Tecton. We're going to be using our trusty Dragon Warhammer here to send our specs. Of course, the first spec is guaranteed. Now, as far as spellbook goes, I didn't really go too much over that, but we are going to be on the Arceus spellbook so that we have access to thralls. This is going to be pretty important. And then to get through the rooms, we are going to be using an Osmumtum's Fang, but obviously we have the Dragon Hunter Lance for the actual Ohm fight. We've also brought in a Dragon Hunter Crossbow, also for the Ohm fight, but the Bofa is going to get us through all the rooms. Now, the Bofa is very viable for Ohm itself as well, but I do believe having a Dragon Hunter Lance, or Crossbow I should say, is a little bit better if you can afford the inventory space. Now, speaking of inventory space, you can see that I have a lot of space here in my inventory. If you're not too familiar with the raid, and maybe you just want some insurance as well, you can definitely bring in a few pieces of food, or like a prayer potion, or something like that. So this specific method here I'm doing at Tecton with the Osmumtum's Fang is the same exact method as a Scythe of Vitter. So in the future, or hey, maybe you have a Scythe of Vitter now, this exact method I'm doing with the Osmumtum's Fang is the same method you would be employing if you had your hands on that scythe. So just in case you were wondering, and maybe you did get lucky with the scythe, or maybe you're very experienced at Tob, but not so much at Chambers of Xerix, and now you're after that Twisted Bow. Or maybe you came from TOA, you have a Shadow now, and you're looking to pair it with the Ancestral set, which, again, all the more reason why you should be sending Challenge mode rather than regulars. I will say though, the regular full layout is going to be a good tool if you want to send some practice without getting hit too hard in challenge mode, because everything in challenge mode, while the mechanics are the same, you know, the rooms are the same, the layout is the same, assuming you run full layout, it does hurt quite a bit more. So transitioning into the crab room here, I am going to tank that crystal, but it's absolutely not necessary. It's just to speed up the room a little bit. You do want to focus on the range crystal first, and then you transition over here to stun these two into place, or the mage crystal next, and then you drag this crab that you did not smash to get in position for this black crystal here, which is an empty no attack crystal. So just a matter of waiting here. And there we go. And then for the last crystal over on the other side, the melee crystal, we're going to smash that crab into place. Come over here, and then we're going to smash this crab into place. And there we go. So one of the talking points when people are looking to get into solo CMs is, oh, are you prepping or no prepping? Some people might have the misconception that you absolutely have to no prep. That is absolutely not the case. You have all the time in the world. You really have so much time. That's another point of concern, right? People think you're very limited on time, but that's not true at all. I mean, scratch that. It is true, but the amount of time you do have is insane. In order to meet the time requirement for a solo CM is 1 hour and 10 minutes. Now, obviously, you want to be a lot faster than that. You don't want to take 1 hour and 10 minutes, but in terms of learning, you're not going to get punished for that. All right, we're going to go ahead and drop a potion here just to make some space because we are going to want to pick up planks as well as juice and mushrooms. We can forego the Sicily, as the Sicily is just for the prayer enhance, which, I mean, we just dropped one over there, so we already have one. Okay, more juice and mushrooms, and there we go. Let's move on ahead now. Let's go ahead and build the storage unit. And we'll deposit some things. And then deposit everything into private, everything else. And then come back here and pick up the axe. And we're going to begin chopping, but also make our way back over to where our potions are. We're going to want those back for sure. Our prayer, enhance, and revet. Now, if you've brought more switches into the raid, you might not have room for the revitalization, and that's perfectly okay. The enhance should be able to get you through these rooms, but I suppose if you're less experienced or if your gear is not that strong and you're just taking your time, you do want to pick up that revet. All right, so we have 28 kindling. We're going to go ahead and deposit that, and then we're going to try to get another 28. I'm going to begin dragging my potions to the bottom of my inventory so that afterwards, when we're ready to withdraw all our gear, things are where they are as they should be. All right, that's another 28 kindling. We're going to light a second brazier. And then from here, we're just going to chop as much as we can, but also we're paying attention to that percentage bar dropping right there. We're going to try and give us as much time as we think we need in order to withdraw our gear safely so that we can do the fight. Right now, we're getting absolutely massive chops. We might just end up getting another 28. We do. That is fantastic for our points. Now, you can take this room a bit slower and milk the points, but in my opinion, it's just not worth it. So we withdraw all, and we can actually part ways with the axe and tinderbox. And we can actually deposit some more things here, like the salve, pickaxe, lance, hammer, crossbow. We don't need those. We're going to use our burning claw specs here, and something that you can consider once you're more comfortable with the raid is to actually bring a surge potion. You know, this is all situational. This is something you would want to bring if you're experienced with the raid, but also depends on your inventory based on your exact gear setup. The more experienced you are with the raid, the more switches and gear, niche gear you're going to bring to speed up specific rooms and whatnot. But I would say right now what we're bringing is the very bare minimum of what you need to get through a raid. In fact, you know, like I said earlier, you don't really need the Dragon Hunter crossbow. So you could just perfectly stick it out with a Bofa if you so choose, but even then, for us, we still have plenty of inventory space, is the point I'm saying. All right, moving on to the shaman route. Now, I did pre-pot a anti-venom before starting this raid, and you can see that I still have just under 5 minutes of that. But I also realized in this raid I'm wearing a Serp helmet, so technically I didn't really need to pre-pot that. I would just have to wear my Serp helm in here, which is obviously less DPS than having full crystal on, but just something to consider as well. Now, if you truly are going really slowly, you may also want to consider either A, wearing the Serpentine helmet, or B, bringing the anti-venom or anti-poison into the raid so you can actually sip it to ensure that it's actually running when you're here at Shamans. But as you can see in this raid, we have, 4 minutes left on this, so it wasn't even close. Our prayer is running a little low, so we have that revet. If not, if you didn't carry the revet with you or a prayer potion or anything like that, you may want to consider being a little bit more careful with your prayer at this point. Maybe do a little bit of flicking if necessary, even if it's only the offensive prayers. And of course, as we showcased on the first shaman, setting up the safe spots do help as well. But sometimes they can be a bit annoying to deal with, and they just simply won't jump when you need them to jump, and vice versa when you misclick or something, and then they instantly punish you for it. Alright, moving on, we're picking up the boot shoe. We are going to be prepping here. We only need the boot shoes for the bruise and rebits. We are going to plant in both patches here. Most times, you really only just need the one patch. It'll last, but just in case you get unlucky and the first patch breaks, you don't have to sit around waiting. Alright, we're going to go ahead and deposit everything, but in shared, we're going to take the spade and 13 juice, 8 mushrooms back out. Now, you don't have to do these numbers specifically, but these are just numbers I'm very comfortable with. 13 bruise, 8 rebits. I've done this so much so that, you know, I can just instantaneously do it without having to count or anything like that. Simply drop 4 vials on the ground. I now have exactly 21 vials in my inventory. Now, obviously, adjust these numbers based on your experience in the raid. You may need more bruise, you may need more revits, or if you're really trying to min-max, you probably don't even need as much as this. Keep in mind, in a solo setting, you do have all the potions available to you in this raid. So the very next room we're going to be doing is Vanguards, and that drops a ton of supplies. So keep that in mind as well. Alright, we've made 8 restores. We're going to go ahead and make the 13 brews now. And with this exact inventory setup, we have space for exactly 13 boot shoes. So like I said, you really don't have to count with the way I did this prep. Prepping might seem like a very minor detail in the grand scheme of running chambers, but you can also kill a lot of time, waste a lot of time doing prep. But the fashion we did it in, we have plenty of brews and restores to work with now, but we also didn't take a whole lot of time in doing so. We're going to go ahead and finish up making the brews over here by this chest. And then we're going to deposit everything. We're going to withdraw all. And there's some things we don't need here. Which again, with the way we withdrew all and deposited all, it's everything at the bottom of our inventory. So we're going to go ahead and take our overload and enhance back out to SIP, obviously. And you can actually go ahead and drop those now because you'll be able to get brand new ones at Vanguards. Alternatively, you can also get brand new ones at Vespula. Like I said, either way, you can have a ton of potions available to you, so it's really not too big of a concern. We're going to go ahead and try and follow this green range Vanguard around and also use our Burning Claw specs here. And then this is the only Vanguard in which you can... Oh, we actually risked a reset there, as I was too busy talking. But the range Vanguard is the only Vanguard in which you can step under to hide from it. The other ones will, like, wiggle around to try and path to you. Let's try to get one more Trident hit there. Very nice. And then we'll swap into our range gear. It's very important to understand your max hits, so you don't run the risk of resetting the Vanguards here. And the most important thing in here is just to be patient. Only move when the Vanguards are moving, otherwise stay in place. At the very basics anyways, once you get a better feel for this room, you can more freely do what you need, as you'll recognize like when you're able to move and whatnot. Because these Vanguards' aggro range depend on where they initially spawn. You can see how this melee Vanguard is actually running away from me. In other raids, depending on where it spawned, it could actually try to path towards me. But where I'm standing right now on this mark tile is actually a safe spot for if a Vanguard is to my right there. We do have enough spec for Burning Claws again, which relatively recently they increased the spec cost for the Burning Claws. They used to be 30 per spec, which meant that with 100% spec you could spec 3 times, but now it's 35, so you can really only spec twice. So slight nerf to the Burning Claws. But Burning Claws aren't exactly hard to obtain, so I sort of understand it. I know some people may not be too happy about that. We're almost done with the Vanguard room here. Our weakest damage by far is Mage in the Vanguard's rooms, but even then, the Trident seems to be doing just okay there. Now typically in most of my solo CMs, I bring 2 Brews and 1 Revet down here in the Vanguards. I did take the extra one just because I know I'm using kind of not as good gear right now, right? A far cry from max gear, but seems like that went quite well anyways. Alright, we're going to go ahead and pick up the Overload and Enhance, and then of course all the Brews and Revets. We don't need any of the other potions. And then we just make sure we have 1 open inventory slot so that we can begin opening these chests right away. There's not much to this room. If you want to be a little bit more optimal with your speed, the time it takes in this room, you do want to get like 9 to 11 grubs and instantly start feeding into the trough. And then the idea is that you never want to see that trough empty. The corrupted scavenger right there is constantly feeding from it. But, you know, sometimes you just kind of get shafted from how long it takes to open a singular chest. Other times it's instantaneous like that, but sometimes you just never know. So like this one's taking a fair bit longer. And while you're doing this room, the most important thing is actually like thinking ahead as far as your inventory goes. So right now we're depositing all our potions. We're keeping our melee gear near the top. And then we're going to go ahead and bank our mage gear, except we still want thralls. And then right here, we can go ahead and take out the specialty items we need for like specific rooms. And after that, we want our Overload and Enhance, mostly Revets in our inventory, and like 1 Brew for emergency sake. We needed 1 more grub there, but there we go. Now we continue. As you move to Vespula, you want to make sure you have your Quick Prayer set to Redemption and Rigor. If you're ranging it, or if you have Max Mage, then obviously Augury instead. Our Overload's about to expire here, which is kind of awkward timing. So we do have to be a little careful on that. But yeah, we're going to rely on just Redemption procking here. Not much to it. Unfortunately, with the Bofa, this is significantly slower than, say, using a Twisted Bow or a Shadow, but, I mean, that makes sense. The 2 things I just listed are mega rare weapons, one of which in this raid we're specifically going after. But the Bofa is more than serviceable, and this is what I'm here to show you guys. Heck, even a Dragon Hunter crossbow. The Dragon Hunter crossbow is probably where I would personally draw the line. If I had any less gear than a Dragon Hunter crossbow as a main hand weapon, I would probably not do solo CMs quite yet. And in that instance, you would mostly be relying on like Dragon Ruby bolts or something. Regular rubies are fine as well, but again, when you're using it as a main hand weapon, you kind of just want to hit hard regardless of whether those rubies occur or not. So something I neglected to do was actually sip my stamina potion early there. So slight mistake, I ran out of run energy. Do sip the stamina before you begin doing all of this. So we did take out a ton of Revets, but I also made sure to leave some in the storage still so that I wouldn't accidentally burn through all of them. Here you can also just be mindful of that, right, and make sure you don't use all your revits. If you don't want to use any more, you can rely on your prayer enhance if it comes down to it. So right here, we have the option of picking up the overload and enhance again if we so choose, but I mean, doesn't really matter. In the solo setting, you're just going to get more. You're going to get another overload at Vasa. I guess you do want to consider your enhanced situation there though, because you won't get another one until Muttadile. So right here, we're going to hit the chest and get more brews because now we're doing the Tightrope room. Nothing fancy here. We're going to summon our Thrall, and then we're going to work on the mages first, protect mage, and range them. We do summon our Thrall here, but you'll notice that I didn't summon one back at Vespula, and that's just simply because the Thrall won't actually reach the portal, so it really does nothing. Yeah, in this room, if you're just simply actually fighting the Deathly Mage and Rangers, just be mindful of your health. Try to eat on your overload timers 15 so that you keep your DPS up, your stats up. But also, you know, if you're not careful, just kind of have to brew whenever you absolutely need to. The Majors are honestly pretty chill, but the Rangers here hurt quite a bit. And something that you can do to mitigate your damage taken is flicking into your melee gear or your best range defense. More times than not, you are going to go through quite a bit of brews here, which is why we prepped so many. Now there are methods to, you know, avoid this entirely, but that's a bit more advanced tech. We're not going to be going over that in this specific run, obviously. Now, if you're afraid in a situation where you're taking heavy damage, something that you need to know, and once you understand it, you'll, you know, pretty much never plank here, short of like just simply a misclick or something, is that the damage registers when the arrow physically hits your character. So, let's say you're at something as low as 5 health, and the ranger shot its arrow, and you're thinking, oh no, I'm gonna plank. Well, as long as you click your food, click your brew, as the arrow is still traveling, it'll never hit you more than a 5. But the brew will heal you for what? I believe it's 19. So you'll essentially, it's the same concept as tick eating, but it's not tick eating in the sense that you have to eat on the tick because you really have so much time. It accounts for the travel time of the projectile. So right here, we're just going to go ahead and re-up on our brews and restores. You can definitely leave some inventory space as well because next room is Guardians, which you're pretty much going to take no damage. And in Vasa, if you execute it correctly, you're also going to take next to no damage. And Vasa actually gives you 2 brews back. So that's something to consider. You could leave some inventory space so that you can pick up those 2 brews. But also, depending on your situation, for us, we're very confident in the amount of supplies we have. And for the purposes of this video, just showcasing the amount we prepped and how, you know, how easy it is, how you don't have to worry about the amount of brew consumption you're doing to get through the rooms. I just went ahead and took out like 8 brews, right? That's more than plenty. We also have our stamina potion right now, which we did need for Vespula, but for the rest of the rooms here up until Ulm, we really don't need it. And this is actually a regular stamina. I meant to bring an extended stamina, so that's a slight mistake. But I do think we'll be able to get through Ulm anyways with a 3 dose. But yes, if you are bringing only 1 potion for stamina, I highly recommend extended stamina. If not, probably bring 2 stamina potions, regular stamina potions, to be more careful. So that was another little mistake by me. I thought I brought an extended one in, but that is actually a regular one. You know, honestly, I really should just convert all my regular staminas into extendeds. There's really no reason to use regular ones if I have access to extended ones. Alright, here we are just gonna turn on Prey Melee just as an extra precaution here. While we are executing this step back method correctly, sometimes the melee hits are just unavoidable. Even doing this method correctly, you are occasionally going to get hit. What this method does though is it actually dodges the falling boulders. The second Guardian's about half HP. Now I know there's a section of the player base out there that just absolutely does not enjoy skilling, but if you're looking to chambers, skilling does matter. Herblore levels for the brew making and the revet making, which is 70 herblore at the bare minimum. And then mining, wood cutting levels do matter as well. Okay, Guardian's done. Let's go ahead and run into the room. We're going to try to execute the Vasa teleport skip here. I do believe we have that down. There we go. Now, when you're using a 4-tick weapon like a Bofa, it is very simple to dodge those rocks coming at you, as well as keeping your hits up without missing any. I'll showcase this after I get done with this first crystal. We're setting some Burning Claws. There we go. So we're going to swap back into our range gear, and basically what you do is you click the boss to attack the boss, and then you run a tile, click the boss again, run a tile, click the boss, and if you just alternate this, you'll never get hit, and you'll also never lose ticks on shooting your Bofa or whatever 4-tick weapon you're using. I guess the Bofa is really the only 4-tick range weapon, right? I think. If for some reason you're using a blowpipe, obviously that also works in this situation as well. So, 25 minutes into this raid, having just realized that we brought a regular stamina potion in instead of an extended stamina, I am going to be extra stingy on that right now. We are low on stamina at the moment, but we should be able to finish out this Vasa. You can see that the Burning Claws and the Osmuntum's Fang really aren't quite effective on these crystals. Just a couple more hits here. Hopefully we don't get teleported. If it reaches another crystal, it will definitely teleport at that point. Okay, we are good. So, this is a bit awkward, but with our current overload timer with just 30 seconds left, we're going to go ahead and re-overload right now. And also redemption. I just noticed my HP threshold there. We're going to get a bit of health back. Very nice. We're going to pick up these brews. Also going to go ahead and drop that enhance so that we can pick up this 3-dose brew. We're heading into Mystics and Muttadile, so we're going to want as many brews as possible as we can hold. The challenge to floor 3 here in the challenge mode chambers is just if you have enough resources to make it through this entire floor 3, this is probably the toughest part of the raid short of the actual Ohm fight. Okay, this is a bit awkward. We're going to go ahead and drop this 1 dose here. And then we're going to be ranging, but obviously with the Sound Amulet on. Let's summon our Thrall. Make sure we keep our prayer up as well. In fact, I'm going to try to make use of this 1 dose here and then pick up my 1 dose brew back up before we move on. And there we go. Let's sip the dose. Now you can always get that first skeletal. Well, actually not true, but more times than not, you can always get that Skeletal Mystic to that corner safe spot over there, and then these other 2 Mystics in the room are going to be a bit more random. Important thing here in the Skeletal Mystics room is to try to get these into corner safe spots. And what happens here is that these guys are trying to melee you, they're trying to path to melee you, but they're confused because they can't quite get to you because they're like a 2x2, right? But you do have to keep mage on because during that moment, they're actually alternating looking to melee you as well as sending out a mage attack. And you can see we just ate a 33 melee, so you do really want to sit high health during this situation. And also you do want to get your health up in preparation for the dreaded Muttadile room that's coming up next. You know, Jagex really knew what they were doing by putting the Muttadile room right before Ulm. So right now we have 36.7 thousand points. And when you plank in this raid, you lose about half your points. So it'd be very painful to plank right now, and we'd be brought down to about like 20,000 points. Okay, heading into the Muttadile room, you're going to want to swap into some tankier gear. And in our case, I think it's literally just the Serp Helm and the Fire Cape. We're going to pick up the axe for a range, and you do want to keep like Rigor or Augury on because those do provide defensive bonuses as well. And then what you want to do is every time you get a woodcutting EXP drop, you're free to heal up, you're free to attack the boss, and then click back on the tree. Similar concept at Ice Demon, where you know you can do certain actions in between the woodcutting cycle. And you do want to get your health as high as you can. Because while, you know, a couple of consecutive zeros there, all of a sudden you can take up to like 60, nearly 70 damage, I think. Alright, tree chopped, and perfect timing, we actually got the Muttadile below 50%. While you're chopping the tree, if the Muttadile falls below 50%, it actually will go to the tree and heal from it, so you do have to be mindful of that. Now right now we're using the Bofa to finish off this baby Muttadile. You may want to consider swapping to your melee gear with your Osmumtum's Fang. The Bofa is better DPS, but you're also a lot squishier in your range setup than in your melee setup. For us, I'm actually not exactly sure if that's the case because we are wearing obsidian legs and a fighter torso, which are quite squishy actually. No, we should probably put our assembler back on. We're not going to risk it here. We're just going to chug a bunch of brews. And just a couple more hits here. There we go, and our overload actually expired on that last hit. And get a fresh new overload and enhance, and then we're going to heal up as much as we can while heading towards home. We're also going to swap into our melee gear. Now, a common mistake I used to make when I had similar gear as this and I was running a lot of solo CMs is that because I have the Fang equipped right now to get through the rooms, sometimes I would accidentally bring the Fang in. So something to note is right away, maybe consider taking out your Dragon Warhammer, right, and equipping that, and then putting the Dragon or the Osmumtum's Fang away as soon as possible. So what we can do right now is drop a Revet and Brutes to the ground, put all our potions away real quick. It's just easier to do this unless you're very familiar with your inventory, in which actually right now I'm really not, because this is not a setup that I would typically use, right? But we are going to bring our mage gear at the top of our inventory, and we're going to take out our Dragon Hunter crossbow, and we're going to forego the crystal helmet. We're not going to be needing that. And you can see we have plenty of supplies. So now that we're ready, we can overload and enhance again, and we can heal back up before we head into Ulm, just to make sure we have the most resources possible heading into the Ulm fight. Because obviously, once we're in there, we can't exit short of planking. We're going to begin by, first of all, waiting to see which side it spawns on, and then sending a Dragon Hunter. Why do I keep saying that? A Dragon Warhammer. Unfortunately, that missed, so let's just go ahead and send another one right now. And then we are going to want to camp the light bear. So we did put our trident on long range for the Vanguards room just so we could reach everything. But here in the Olm fight, you want to make sure you put that back on accurate, because this strategy we're doing, the 3-0 method, does require you to be actually out of range when you're right on that ring finger tile right there, so that you get dragged towards the left when you click on this hand. So if we're doing this correctly, we should be chilling, taking no damage over the course of the mage hand. Again, we're using just a trident of the swamp. I've even done solo CMs way in the past with a trident of the seeds, but I would highly not recommend that. And also these days with the Ironman progression, you probably have an Eye of Ayak, honestly. And in terms of learning, having a Sanguinesti staff from Taub would also be very, very beneficial because of the healing factor. They actually just buffed that as well recently, so that's something to consider as well. Maybe you're not an Ironman, but you're working your way up in the gear progression as well. But short of having Max Mage with Tunic and Shadow, the Eye of Ayak is definitely the next best thing. But the Eye of Ayak is a 3-tick weapon, so there's different strategies when it comes to using that. Alright, we're going to transition over into melee phase here. We're not quite in cycle yet, so let's go ahead and fix that. Humble 0 off right there. At Olm, something to consider is that obviously it will just alternate between range and mage attacks, right? And bad showcase here, but if it mages you, the next attack is more than likely going to be another mage attack, like that right there. At the end of the day though, it's RNG and sometimes you're just going to get a bit unlucky, but just be mindful of what you're actually getting hit by as well. So if it ranges, it'll more than likely range again, but you can see right there, we actually got hit by a mage attack 3 times consecutively. 4 times. We're sitting at 41 health, which is, you know, somewhat healthy, but something to consider is that the Olm's max hit is a 43, so you just, honestly, if you can help it, never even put yourself into that risk, right? But when it comes to your brew consumption, something to be mindful of is your overload timer. So right now we have just over a minute left on that, and we're at 40 health right now. But we know we're heading into P2 here, and we're going to start with the mage hand, in which it's 0 damage. So I'm not going to waste brews here, because we're going to let the overload timer run out so that we get 50 health back, and by then it'll actually be putting us at 90 health. So if we were to brew right now, it would be a complete waste. Now, obviously, if you're not very confident with staying in the mage cycle here, maybe consider sipping like a brew dose, right? Just to put you over that 43 health threshold. Couple of splashes here with our trident, unfortunately. We are wearing a serp helm and dragon boots, which, you know, don't exactly offer mage bonuses, in fact quite the opposite. So you could consider taking those off as well if your inventory allows it, or maybe consider dropping some potions on the ground temporarily just to make space for dropping those. But it's pretty minimal, honestly, and obviously in de-equipping those pieces of gear, you are losing out on some defense as well, so just something to consider. Alright, that is the hand down, and because we were camping the light bear over the course of the mage hand, when we first started the phase, we actually missed a hammer, so with the light bearer, we have the ability to send another spec. And then we're going to go ahead and stamina potion here because we're very low on stamina. Don't want to run out of run energy. Oh no. Our prayer situation, however, is not great, so we'll have to be very mindful of that. We have not been in cycle at all, which is quite unfortunate. But we're still keeping up damage on the hand, and it is nearly done. We aren't gonna risk it for the biscuit here. 41 health. Hit us a 7 on prayer, humble. But you know, in the long term, when you're running this raid, farming the points up, farming the KCs in hopes of getting those ancestral pieces and the twisted bow, I can speak from experience when I say this. Do not risk it. It will hit you a 43 on 43. If you ever think about it, you know, like over the course of my many KCs, I cannot tell you how many times that's happened, as unlikely as it seems. So if you're in a position where you have to bruise, go ahead and use them, you know, don't greed out. There's a careful balance to be had though, I will say, you know, like I mentioned the overload timer and not wanting to needlessly brew up to stay at a safe health pool, but also you don't want to sit too low and then be like one mistake away from blanking. So we now are on P3. As I mentioned earlier, our revit, our prayer situation is less than ideal right now. You may want to consider bringing a third prayer potion, or revit I should say. Looking at it now, we have over 3 brews left. I probably should have dropped one of the brews in favor of another revit in hindsight. But like I said, it's not like I run this gear setup often these days, so I wasn't exactly sure. Okay, we have done very well with our stamina situation, I gotta say. Back in the day when I was running gear setups similar to this, now I've never truly ran a similar setup like this. I never had obsidian legs. I actually went ahead and picked up the obsidian legs specifically for this run. So typically I'd have like thorac legs or something at this stage, at the very least. Or just camp my crystal legs, which would provide more defensive bonuses, but obviously the obby legs do give me a little bit of attack bonuses, strength bonus. There we go. Pretty smooth transition. Oh, right away we get a ruby. Another ruby. So that was actually a ticky right there, but it was also a little bit scary because we actually ate a crystal as well. A little bit spooky. Oh, we're getting a lot of rubies on this one. Now, I will say though, using something like a Dragon Hunter crossbow, the rubies will make a massive, massive difference. Without any ruby procs, this could take upwards of like 2 minutes, if not more. Heck, this could still take like 2 minutes, honestly. So right now, our stats are brewed down, which is not ideal, but I mean, we kind of just had to brew, right? Sometimes, as much as you want to keep your DPS up, you know, your stats up for your DPS, you can't do any damage if you're planking, you know? Okay, so right now, we're running quite low on the brews as we're taking heavy damage. So something to consider is, right now we're doing a 4-to-1 method, so we're expected, you know, excluding the crystal damage, which we're taking a lot of right now, we're expected to only receive 1 hit from Ohm every 4 hits we do, but we've been taking heavy crystal damage, and also we just haven't been executing it too well. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to transition into a 2-0. So obviously you're going to lose out on a bit of DPS here, but in the name of surviving, this is the 2-0 method, where you just hit 1 time on each side, and then you run to the other side to get another hit. So this is significantly slower, but also, ideally, this will save us from planking. During this time, when we're completely out of brews or something, and as long as we stay in cycle, the only damage we're potentially going to take as we fall out of cycle there, that is a chance, and of course, see, 1 chance is all it took, right? Unfortunate run. I really would have loved to just, you know, perfectly execute this, but that was a very messy head phase, unfortunately. And yeah, 1 chance and we were 1 hit away from a deathless run. But with a little bit more practice with your exact setup, and you know, you also can consider dropping some switches. For example, we very easily could have just, you know, not brought the obsidian legs and camped our crystal legs. We could have dropped maybe one of our capes, right? Like maybe not bring the imbued Ceridonian cape, or even the gloves, although I highly recommend bringing ferocious gloves. They do make a significant difference. We could have dropped that as well. But we didn't, and we were just a little short of having a deathless run there, but I do want to stress, and you could see it for yourself, we made a ton of mistakes there, but we almost got away with it. Just like literally 1 less mistake, and that would have been a flawless deathless run. And on top of that, we got a 45-minute, 3-second raid right there, which is actually just 3 seconds over the master time.